The sky above the alien empire was a strange shade of violet, streaked with silver clouds that shimmered like liquid metal. In the heart of the capital city, tall towers spiraled into the sky, their tips glowing softly in the dim light. Everything in the empire was perfect, controlled, and precise. Nothing happened by chance, except for humans. Liara adjusted the strap of her sleek combat suit and checked her weapon. She had been trained her entire life to follow orders without question. Her mission was clear: capture a human named Ethan. He was dangerous, not because of strength or weapons, but because of his voice. The Empire had studied humans for decades, and they knew that Ethan's words could inspire hope, courage, and rebellion. The thought of that made Liara's stomach tighten. "Liara," a voice buzzed in her earpiece. "Your ship is ready. Coordinates set for Earth. Remember your orders, capture him alive." "No mistakes." "Yes, Commander," she replied. Her voice was steady, but inside a small part of her hesitated. She had never encountered a human personally. All her knowledge came from reports, studies, and simulations. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous, and yet intriguing. Her ship hummed as it prepared to leave the atmosphere. Liara's eyes scanned the city below one last time. She had spent her whole life in service to the Empire, obeying rules, following orders, never questioning. Yet as the stars stretched out before her, she felt a tiny spark of unease. What if this human was different? What if capturing him was not as simple as the Empire claimed? Hours later, the ship broke through Earth's atmosphere and descended toward a dense forest. The planet was beautiful. Green forests stretched endlessly. Rivers glittered like silver ribbons, and mountains rose sharply into the clouds. Unlike the Empire's sterile cities, Earth seemed alive, chaotic, free. Liara landed in a small clearing, the ship's engines quieting to a low hum. She stepped out, her boots sinking slightly into soft moss. She was careful. She knew humans could be tricky, unpredictable, but she expected fear, panic, maybe even resistance. What she did not expect was the calm. From a distance, she saw him. Ethan. He stood near a small fire, his posture relaxed, his eyes bright with curiosity. There was something in his presence that was different. He was human, yes, but he did not look afraid. He did not look weak. There was a calm power in him, a kind of quiet confidence that made her chest tighten in ways she did not understand. Liara stepped forward, keeping herself hidden behind a thick tree. She watched him carefully. Ethan's lips moved, and she heard it. His voice. It was not loud or commanding, but soft, warm, and steady. Even from a distance, she felt a strange pull. It was as if his words were not just sounds, but a gentle force reaching deep inside her mind. "Hello," she called cautiously, stepping out into the clearing. Ethan turned his head, and a small smile appeared on his face. "I've been expecting you," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried strength, understanding, and hope. Liara's hand went instinctively to her weapon, but her body refused to raise it fully. Something about his voice made her hesitate. Every instinct she had told her to capture him immediately, to follow orders. Yet every instinct also told her that harming him might be wrong. "You're Liara," Ethan said, his eyes studying her face. "I've read about your empire, your soldiers. You follow orders well, but I can see the doubt in you." Liara's brow furrowed. How could he know? She had spent her life hiding emotions, hiding doubts, hiding weaknesses. Yet here was a human, standing calmly, speaking to her as if he could see inside her mind. I am here to capture you," she said, her voice shaking slightly despite her efforts to remain firm. Ethan nodded. "I expected that. But tell me, do you really want to?" His gaze was steady. There was no anger, no accusation, only curiosity. Liara's grip on her weapon loosened. She took a step back, trying to steady herself. Her entire life had been built on obedience, precision, and control. But this human, he was different. She felt something stirring in her, something unfamiliar. Fear, yes, but also admiration, curiosity, and something stronger, an echo of her own desire for freedom. "You speak differently than the Empire taught me to expect," she said quietly. You make me question things I've never questioned." Ethan's smile grew. "Good, that is the first step. Humans are not just flesh and voice. We are ideas, hope, courage, and anyone who listens can choose to see the world differently." Liara's heart raced. The calmness in his voice was not just soothing, it was powerful. She felt her purpose shifting, her mission blurring. She had been trained to follow orders without question, but every word he spoke made her wonder, what if obedience was not the only path? Suddenly her earpiece buzzed sharply. Liara, status report. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. I'm assessing the situation, she said slowly, her eyes never leaving Ethan. The Empire's voice growled in her ear. Do not waste time. Capture him now. You cannot fail. Liara swallowed hard. Failure had never been an option before, but something deep inside told her that following orders blindly might be the true failure. She glanced at Ethan and he gave her a small nod of encouragement. I am not your enemy, he said softly. I only ask that you listen, understand, and choose. Liara's mind raced. She had never been offered choice. Her life had been a series of orders, missions, and rules. Yet here was a human standing calmly in the forest, showing her that she could choose for herself. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of Earth's forests, and Liara felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest. She realized that her mission was no longer simple. Capturing Ethan was no longer the only option. I need time, she whispered, stepping slightly back. Her weapon hung loosely at her side. Ethan's eyes glimmered. Take all the time you need. Listen to your own heart. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight inside ourselves. Liara felt a shiver run through her. The words resonated deep within her, stirring doubts, hopes, and possibilities she had never allowed herself to imagine. She looked at Ethan again. Really looked. And for the first time in her life, she wondered what it would mean to act on her own. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest. Liara knew the Empire would not wait forever. Their rules were strict, their patience thin. But for the first time, she understood that rules were not always right, and obedience was not always noble. Her hand tightened slightly, not on her weapon, but on the strap of her bag. Somewhere deep inside, a spark had been lit, a spark that might grow into rebellion, hope, and change. Liara took a deep breath. She did not yet know what she would do next. She only knew one thing. Meeting this human, hearing his voice, had changed her forever, and for the first time she wondered if her life might belong to her, not the Empire. And in that quiet forest under the soft violet sky, the first seeds of doubt and the first stirrings of rebellion began to take root. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. Birds chirped softly in the distance and the rustling leaves whispered in the gentle breeze. Liara had spent hours walking among the trees, keeping a careful distance from Ethan, yet never leaving his sight. Every step she took was weighed with caution, every movement measured. Her mission should have been simple, capture the human, but her mind was anything but simple now. Ethan sat by the small fire he had made, arranging twigs and stones with a patience that reminded her of something she had almost forgotten: peace. He looked up and saw Liara, yet he did not flinch or draw a weapon. Instead, he smiled, as if he had been expecting her hesitation. You don't have to hide, Ethan said softly. I know why you came, and I also know that you're not ready to follow those orders blindly. Liara froze. His words were like a key turning inside her mind. How could he know so much? She had learned long ago to hide her doubts, her curiosity, her hesitation, but Ethan's voice, it carried understanding. It did not demand, it did not accuse. It simply invited. I don't understand, Liara said cautiously. You speak as if you know me, as if you know my thoughts. You're only human. How is this possible? Ethan leaned back on his hands, letting the warmth of the fire wash over him. Humans are not just flesh and bone, Liara. We are ideas, stories, hope. And sometimes we can see what others are afraid to see in themselves. Liara's eyes narrowed. Stories? Hope? She had been trained to think of humans as unpredictable, dangerous, and illogical. Yet here was a human, calm and confident, speaking words that made her chest tighten and her mind whirl. You are trained to obey, Ethan continued, but obedience is not the same as understanding. You follow orders because you have been told to, not because you believe in them. That is why you hesitate now. Liara's hand trembled slightly. She had never admitted doubt aloud, not even to herself. But Ethan's voice was gentle, not mocking. It carried no threat, and that was the strangest feeling of all, being seen, truly seen, and not judged for it. I was trained to capture you, she whispered. It is my duty. My life has always been about duty. I do not know any other way. Ethan nodded. I understand. Duty can be a strong chain, but chains can be broken, Liara. You just need to see the strength you already carry inside yourself. Liara stared at him, confusion and awe battling within her. His words were not magic, yet they felt like magic. They made her question everything she had believed. For the first time in her life, she considered the possibility. The first rays of dawn filtered through the forest canopy, casting golden light on the moss-covered ground. Liara stood silently behind a tree, watching as Ethan moved with calm efficiency. He prepared supplies, checked the small perimeter around his sanctuary, and spoke softly to the few humans hiding with him. Every movement he made was careful, precise, yet full of life, so unlike the rigid routines of the Empire she had known all her life. Liara's thoughts were elsewhere. Her mind replayed the night's conversations with Ethan, the strange warmth she had felt when he spoke, the pull of his words that resonated deep inside her. She had been trained to obey, to follow orders without hesitation. Yet now, for the first time, she felt her own judgment outweigh the Empire's commands. A sharp buzzing suddenly filled the clearing. Liara's earpiece crackled to life. "Liara, report!" The Empire's voice was sharp, demanding. "Status, have you captured him?" Liara clenched her fists. Her body had been trained for this mission. Her mind for obedience, her hands for action. But something inside her resisted. Ethan was not a threat, not in the way the Empire thought. He was inspiring, not dangerous. He was human, yes, but also more than that. A symbol of hope and courage. I cannot complete the mission," she said softly, more to herself than to the earpiece. "Excuse me." The commander snapped. "Do you understand your orders?" "Failure is not tolerated." Liara pressed her lips together. "I understand my orders. I choose not to follow them." There was silence on the other end. The commander repeated the transmission, disbelief and anger clear even through the crackling channel. "Explain yourself." Liara took a deep breath. "The human is not an enemy. I see now that he is something different. Something worth protecting. I cannot harm him," the Empire's voice roared. "You are defying the Empire. Immediate compliance is required. You will be terminated if you continue this disobedience." Liara cut the connection. Her heart pounded, but a strange calm settled over her. The decision had been made. She would no longer follow orders blindly. She would protect Ethan, and in doing so, she would follow her own path. Ethan looked up, noticing the change in her demeanor. "You've made your choice," he said quietly. "Good. That is the first step toward something greater." Liara nodded, her eyes scanning the forest for danger. The Empire would not wait long before sending reinforcements. Drones, soldiers, perhaps even more advanced operatives, none of that mattered now. She had a new mission: to protect, to fight, to live by her own courage. The hum of engines grew louder in the distance. Shadows of flying drones crossed the treetops, sleek metallic bodies glinting in the early light. Ethan and the humans he protected began moving quickly, gathering their belongings and preparing to flee. Liara stepped forward, standing between the drones and Ethan. Her combat training kicked in automatically. She moved with precision, scanning the forest for choke points, natural cover, and escape routes. Every step was calculated, yet guided by a new instinct. She was no longer acting for the Empire. She was acting for life, for hope, for the chance to protect something meaningful. The first drone touched down near the clearing, its sensors scanning for movement. Liara's heart remained steady. She had fought simulations countless times in her life, but this was real. Her hands gripped her weapon, but she also relied on something she had never used before: intuition, creativity, and the unpredictability of human thought. Ethan stepped forward beside her. "Trust yourself," he said simply. "You already know what to do." Liara nodded. She had spent years learning to obey, and now she was learning to lead herself. With a swift motion, she activated a small device from her belt, emitting a pulse that temporarily disabled the drone's sensors. It wobbled, flickered, and then collapsed to the ground with a metallic clatter. The human stared at her, astonished. Liara realized that in this moment, she had become more than a soldier. She had become an ally, a protector, and perhaps even a symbol of something greater than herself. "Follow me," she commanded, her voice steady. "We move now, quickly and carefully. Stay low and do not panic." Ethan and the humans obeyed without hesitation. Liara led them through the dense forest, using knowledge she had never thought would be needed in a mission. She spotted natural cover, avoided open areas, and even used small streams to hide their tracks. Every decision was a mix of instinct and strategy, a dance of survival that she had never experienced when following orders blindly. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the forest, away from the drone's patrols. Liara noticed how the humans followed Ethan's guidance and how they now looked at her with trust and respect. It was a feeling she had never known. In the Empire, obedience was expected, respect was demanded. Here, respect was earned through action, courage, and care. At a small clearing by a river, they paused. Ethan knelt by the water, scooping up a handful and letting it flow back naturally. "We need to rest," he said. "But only briefly. They will be searching and they will not give up easily." Liara sank to her knees beside him, her mind still alert. She had never thought of herself as a leader. She had never thought of herself as anything more than a soldier. But here, in this moment, she felt it. The first stirrings of autonomy, courage, and defiance. She was no longer a tool of the Empire. She was a protector. She was a choice maker. She was human enough to understand the power of one voice, even if that voice was not hers alone. Ethan looked at her with a small smile. "You've done well," he said. "Not because of skill alone, but because of heart. You see more than you think, and that is what makes you strong." Liara's lips pressed into a thin line. Strength had always been defined by the Empire. Obedience, precision, efficiency. Now strength felt different. It was courage, empathy, and the ability to protect those who could not protect themselves. The drone buzz returned faintly in the distance. Liara stood, signaling the humans to follow. They moved quietly, deeper into the forest, using every skill she had taught them instinctively. She felt alive in a way she had never imagined possible. A thrill that came not from combat, but from choice and purpose. By midday, they reached a small cave hidden by thick vines and rocks. Liara motioned for everyone to enter. Inside, the cool darkness offered temporary safety, a place to rest and regroup. Ethan sat near the entrance, observing her closely. "You are changing," he said softly. "The Empire cannot understand someone like you, but you are beginning to understand yourself." Liara looked away, her thoughts racing. She had no illusions about the dangers ahead. The Empire would not let this go. They would send more drones, more soldiers, perhaps even their elite operatives. But for the first time, she did not fear them as she once would have. Fear had been replaced by something stronger. Determination, courage, and the will to protect. I am not just a soldier anymore," she whispered almost to herself. "I am choosing my path. I will protect you, Ethan, and I will not let them take you." Ethan nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "Good. The first step of defiance is always the hardest. But once it is taken, there is no turning back." Liara felt the truth in his words. The first step had been taken. She had defied the Empire, saved a human, and chosen her own path. There was no returning to the life of obedience and rules she had known. The path ahead would be dangerous, uncertain, and full of impossible choices. But for the first time, Liara felt ready. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, the hum of the drones continued. But inside the cave, Liara felt something she had never felt before. Hope. And with hope came power. Not the kind measured by weapons or commands, but the kind measured by courage, choice, and the willingness to protect what mattered most. The rebellion had begun, quietly, in a forest on a distant planet, and at its heart stood a human and a soldier, united not by orders but by courage, trust, and the understanding that one choice could change everything. The sun rose high above the forest, casting warm light on the trees and rivers below. Liara stood on a small ridge looking down at the humans and aliens who had gathered around Ethan. Word of her defiance had spread quickly. Those who had been oppressed, controlled, or enslaved by the Empire began to come together. And at the center of this growing group stood Liara, no longer just a soldier, but a leader. She felt the weight of that role pressing on her shoulders, but it was different from the weight of the Empire. This was not the weight of orders or rules. It was responsibility, yes, but it was responsibility born of choice. She had chosen to protect these people, and now she had to guide them. Ethan approached her quietly, his voice calm and steady. "They trust you," he said. "Not because you were trained to lead, but because they see courage in you. Courage that comes from choice, not command." Liara nodded, taking a deep breath. The forest below was alive with movement. Humans teaching aliens to hide, aliens learning how to move quietly, and everyone working together in ways the Empire could never have predicted. Liara felt a strange pride. These were beings who had been told they were weak, insignificant, or powerless, and now united they were anything but. Her mind shifted to strategy. They could not simply hide forever. The Empire would send more forces stronger and faster than before. But Liara had knowledge they did not. She knew their tactics, their weaknesses, and their patterns, and now combined with Ethan's ability to inspire, the forest was alive with movement as Liara and her growing team prepared for their next mission. The rebellion had gained momentum, and their small victories had begun to inspire hope across distant colonies. Humans and aliens alike had joined their cause, drawn by tales of the soldier who had defied the Empire and the human whose voice could ignite courage. Liara stood at the edge of a ridge, overlooking a distant Empire communications outpost. The structure was heavily guarded, surrounded by patrol drones and watchtowers. Intelligence reports indicated it was a key hub for the Empire, controlling communications and data flow across several sectors. Disabling it would cripple the Empire's ability to respond quickly to rebellions and give Liara's team a crucial advantage. Ethan approached her, his calm presence steadying her racing thoughts. "This mission is risky," he said quietly, "but it is necessary. Every strike we make now will inspire more to join us, and every victory will weaken their control." Liara nodded. "I understand. We cannot rely solely on stealth. We must combine strategy with unpredictability. The Empire expects soldiers, not rebels who think differently." She gathered her team, a mix of humans and aliens trained under her guidance. Their eyes were full of determination. They trusted her, not because of fear, not because of orders, but because of courage and leadership. "Listen carefully," Liara said, her voice steady. "We strike at night. We move fast, disrupt their systems, and avoid unnecessary confrontation. Our goal is communication. If we can disable this hub, we send a message. The Empire is not invincible, and courage can spark change." The team nodded, silent but focused. Hours later, under the cover of darkness, they moved. Shadows slipped through the forest, silent and precise. Liara's knowledge of the Empire's tactics guided every step. They avoided patrols, bypassed sensors, and used natural cover to their advantage. When they reached the outpost, Liara surveyed the defenses. Drones hovered near the entrance, while guards patrolled in regular patterns. A minor misstep could trigger alarms and summon reinforcements. But Liara was calm. She had trained her team well, and they trusted her. "Position yourselves," she whispered. "3 of you with me. Others disable the power grid from the east. Timing is everything." The team moved with precision. Liara led the way, disabling the first drone with a small pulse device that scrambled its sensors. Another fell silently under the careful hands of her team members. Within minutes, the immediate defenses were neutralized. Ethan's voice crackled softly through a comm link. "You're doing well. Remember, our goal is disruption, not destruction. Make a statement, then leave before reinforcements arrive." Liara's hand moved to the terminal inside the outpost. She plugged in a small device of her own design, bypassing firewalls and security protocols with ease. It was a delicate operation. One wrong move and alarms would sound. But she trusted her skills and the lessons she had learned from years of obedience, now applied with creativity and intuition. Within minutes, the outpost's communication systems went offline. Lights flickered, screens went dark, and the hum of activity ceased. Liara stepped back, letting the device do its work. "Good work," she whispered to her team. "Let's move." They retreated into the forest, unseen and undetected. From a distance, Liara watched the outpost remain silent, the Empire's response delayed by their strike. She felt a surge of pride, not just in herself, but in every human and alien who had risked everything to follow her guidance. Back at the rebel base, the team returned to cheers and admiration. News of the strike spread quickly, reaching distant colonies through encrypted channels. Aliens who had once feared the Empire whispered of hope, while humans dared to believe that change was possible. Liara realized that victory was not measured only by action, but by the inspiration it gave to others. Ethan approached her, his eyes reflecting pride and warmth. "You've done more than just strike a hub," he said. "You've shown everyone that courage and choice matter more than fear. That is the real victory. Liara smiled faintly, feeling the truth of his words. The Empire had power, technology, and control, but it lacked imagination, empathy, and hope. And those were the very things she now wielded as weapons, stronger than any fleet or army. Days passed, and Liara's team continued their operations. They freed captured aliens, sabotaged supply lines, and sent messages of hope to oppressed colonies. Each act of defiance inspired more to join, swelling the ranks of the rebellion. Liara also noticed a change within herself. She was no longer merely reacting, following instincts or orders. She was planning, teaching, guiding, and inspiring. Her mind moved faster, combining strategy with intuition. Her heart guided her decisions, not fear or obedience, and every choice strengthened the rebellion. One evening, as the sun set, Liara and Ethan stood on a ridge overlooking the forest below. Fires of small rebel camps flickered in the distance, scattered yet connected by shared purpose. "They will retaliate," Liara said quietly. "The Empire will send stronger forces. They will not ignore what we have done." Ethan nodded. "Yes, but they cannot stop ideas. They cannot stop courage. And they cannot stop hope. That is why we have a chance. Every victory we achieve now is not just physical, it is a symbol. And symbols last longer than weapons." Liara watched the horizon, her mind filled with determination. She had chosen this path, and there was no turning back. Every step of defiance, every act of courage strengthened her resolve. She knew the Empire would come, stronger than before, but she also knew the rebellion was no longer fragile. It was alive, growing, and unstoppable. Night fell, and the forest was quiet again. Liara reviewed plans for the next operation, teaching her team about communication, strategy, and unpredictability. The Empire was formidable, but the rebellion had something they could not predict: human creativity, courage, and unity. Ethan stood beside her, watching the team move through the camp. "You have become more than I imagined," he said. "Not just a soldier, not just a leader, but a beacon. Your courage inspires others, and that inspiration spreads faster than any weapon." Liara nodded, her mind clear and focused. "We fight not because we want power. We fight because we want freedom, for ourselves and for those who cannot fight alone. Every choice we make matters, every action counts, and together we are stronger than the Empire realizes." The night grew deeper, and the stars above the forest shone brightly. Liara felt the weight of her responsibility, but it was a weight she embraced. She had chosen this path, and with every small victory, the rebellion grew stronger. The Empire would come, no doubt, with fleets and soldiers, ready to crush what they could not control. But Liara and her team were ready too. They had courage, strategy, unity, and hope, the true weapons of the rebellion. And under her guidance, the small acts of defiance had already begun to ignite a fire that no force could extinguish. Liara looked at Ethan, and their eyes met in silent understanding. They had come far, but the true challenge was ahead. The Empire would not give up. They would strike back harder, faster, and stronger than ever. But the rebellion was ready. They had learned, grown, and been inspired. And Liara knew that when the final battle came, courage and hope would stand taller than fear and oppression. The forest whispered around them, alive with the promise of change. Fires burned in hidden camps, a sign that the rebellion was spreading. Liara felt the spark of determination deep in her chest. They had struck the first blow, inspired the first wave, and challenged the Empire's control. The turning point had arrived, and when the Empire realized that a human and a soldier had defied them, inspired a movement, and refused to be controlled, it would be too late. The rebellion was no longer just surviving, it was awakening, and at its heart stood Liara, the rebel queen in the making, and Ethan, the human whose voice had turned obedience into defiance and fear into courage. Together they would face the Empire, not with weapons alone, but with the power of hope, unity, and the unshakable spirit of life itself. The sky above the forest burned with the glow of approaching ships. The Empire had come in force, fleets of sleek vessels cutting through the clouds like silver knives. Distant thunder of engines and energy pulses echoed across the valleys below. Liara stood on the ridge, her eyes scanning the horizon. This was the moment they had prepared for, the culmination of weeks of rebellion, strategy, and courage. Beside her, Ethan remained calm, his gaze steady and unwavering. "They are strong," he said softly. But we are stronger in ways they cannot measure. Courage, hope, unity, these are the weapons that will carry us, Liara nodded. The truth of his words resonated deep within her. The Empire had power, technology, and sheer numbers, but they lacked imagination, empathy, and inspiration. That was something no fleet or weapon could overcome. Below them, the rebel forces assembled. Humans and aliens trained by Liara, moved with precision, ready to defend their homes, their families, and the freedom they had earned. Fires flickered in hidden camps, signaling unity, defiance, and determination. Liara realized the transformation had come full circle, from a soldier trained to obey to a leader inspiring courage across species. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" he asked. Liara took a deep breath. "More than ever, this is no longer about survival. This is about showing the Empire and the galaxy that life, hope, and courage cannot be seen.